Hey everyone, let's talk about these style options for the Soundtoys Decapitator plugin. All right, and before we actually get started here, I just wanted to say that the session example that you guys will be hearing is for a work in progress, so keep that in mind while you listen. It's not a final mix, but it is for an artist that's going to be coming out soon, so I don't have a ton of info yet on that, but I did get permission to share this session, and I will be putting links and stuff as soon as, we come out with it. So with that said, we are focusing on a specific plugin today. So it's the Decapitator plugin by Soundtoys. I love pretty much all the Soundtoys plugins, and I use this Decapitator plugin a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's a good plugin to add analog saturation type effects. So it's emulating some very specific analog saturation devices and techniques. But what I wanted to talk about specifically today are these style buttons. So A, E, N, T, and P. And that's because I was talking to someone the other day, and it kind of came to my attention that these aren't super obvious what they're doing or what they're for. And so I figured I would just kind of explain it a little bit today in my video. And of course, you can always just RTFM and get this information, but that's not as fun, right? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to play this example. I'm going to start kind of back here and let you kind of hear going into things. I have the Decapitator on the snare here, and I kind of did it to bring a little more like crunchiness out in the snare. But if you're listening for what I have the Decapitator on, it's on this snare. This is what we will be soloing in a minute here. But I just wanted to get you an idea of the track as a whole so far. So we do period 5 period to jump to that marker for verse 2. I kind of just labeled these. I don't know if this is exactly what we're going to be calling each section, but you know.
It's the SBB in the building.
Everybody, watch out. Everybody, watch out.
Anyway, that gives you an idea. I'm a little out of control here. So I'm going to solo this snare, and I'm actually going to listen to this part because I don't want to listen to this part where we have that build going on because that's going to mess with the sound a lot. But I'll just kind of play this part here. So maybe what I'll do is I'll do shift period 8 period to kind of start at that exact point there. And maybe I'll do period 9 period as well. So now it'll kind of loop nicely if I want to loop it. Although I'm going to have to hit play and pause to talk to you guys. But anyway, let's listen to it with and without Decapitator. So that kind of gives you an idea for what it's doing, but let's focus on the buttons here. So A, E, N, T, and P. So what do they stand for? So I'll just go from left to right here. So what Soundtoys has said is that they had very, very specific pieces of gear that they ran tests and analysis on, and that's how they developed the programming for these style buttons. So the A stands for Ampex, and what it's modeling is the Ampex 350 tape drive preamp. So this was a very common preamp used back in the day. It has a very smooth sound. A lot of times as the soundboards that these were built into were going out of use, people would actually take these preamps out and keep them as dedicated preamps to use because of, the nice smooth sound that they have and the type of saturation that they lend. So that's what the A is. And again, that's the Ampex 350 tape drive preamp. So it's emulating an actual preamp sound. All right, so let's move on to the E. So I think the E stands for EMI because the E is emulating the Chandler EMI TG channel. So that piece of gear, it's also emulating like vintage mixing consoles, stuff like that. So I believe they say that they made this piece of hardware to emulate like the Abbey Road style mixing boards. mixing consoles, you know. So it has that vintage analog feel to it. But they do say that it has, I believe they use the word sheen to describe the top end, but it has more of that like top end shimmer and then like good beefy low end to it. And the actual piece of gear that it's emulating is both a mic preamp and DI and an EQ. So it's kind of a multi-purpose piece of gear. So that's what the E stands for. All right, so let's move on to the N. So the N stands for Neve, one of my favorite brands of gear. I love the way Neve kind of rounds off the sound that you hear. But this setting is mimicking the Neve 1057 input channel. So you've probably heard of like the 1073, for example. The 1057 is just a little bit earlier. So it's really mimicking that like vintage Neve sound. And so the 1057 input channels were built around germanium transistors. They had more of that like vintage fuzz face sound. So they'll lend that to whatever you're applying this plugin to. Well, the transistors themselves aren't. The software that's emulating the transistors are. Anyway, I don't need to explain that to you guys. That makes sense. So N stands for Neve. All right, so let's move on to the T. So the T stands for thermionic, I believe. So it's the thermionic culture vulture, and it's the triode setting for that. So the culture vulture was one of those early distortion devices that were used for, you know, more than just guitars, used on a range of different things. So I believe they called it a studio distortion device. And my understanding is that was meant to signify that it was to be used on more than just guitars. So people used it on a range of different things. And I believe they might have designed it to be used on a range of different things. But maybe someone that knows more about these can chime in the comments below. But that's the basic idea. It's meant to sound like an overdriven triode tube, and it has a ton of like even harmonics distortion. It's got like a nice punchiness to it. And, you know, side note, that's why I picked this setting for the snare here, because it has that punchiness to it. So there's that. All right, and so the sister setting for this one is P. So this is also the thermionic vulture. I can't speak. The thermionic culture vulture. But what it's emulating is a pentode tube instead of a triode tube. And so that's going to be more odd harmonic distortion. It's going to be a little bit of a different sound. And just to give you an anchor, the pentode tube is commonly used in the output stage of guitar amps. So there's that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loop this section. So I'm going period 8 period based on the marker number, and then holding shift and doing period 9 period. And now it's highlighted this whole, bridge B or whatever we want to call it section. I'm going to hit play and let it loop through and just kind of switch between these style settings so you can hear the difference there. So keep in mind what each of these are as you listen. Again, it's just the snare that's soloed here. There might be some other stuff leaking through pre-fader sends going to auxes, for example, but it should be pretty much the snare that you're hearing. So I'm just going to hit play, and hopefully my computer can handle it, and we will listen. Right, so you can hear how like the Neve and the Ampex have more low end. They've got more oomph to it, and it's a little less in the upper ranges here. This has a little bit more high end shimmer in it. You can hear that punch, and then you can hear a little more of the drive and the oomph there. So they're all a little different. But again, they're mimicking actual physical pieces of gear that people loved back in the day. So that's kind of fun. And, you know, I just put it on snare in here. This is what I already had it on in the mix that I'm working on. So that's why I use snare as an example. But, you know, it's a lot of fun to put on other things as well, like guitars. And, you know, there's a million things that you can put this on. It's a lot of fun. It's fun for effects too, for sound design stuff. I use this plugin a good amount. I think I'd recommend it. And this isn't a sponsored video or anything. Like Soundtoys isn't paying me. I paid for this plugin, you know. So I like it. It's a good plugin. I use it a lot. All right, so that's basically it, what these different style buttons do within the Soundtoys Decapitator. So I hope you guys like that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'd appreciate all of that stuff. And I do have a Patreon, so it's patreon.com/CatoNoise, and my patrons get access to additional content, early release videos. We have a Discord server we're all hanging out on. We have a book club that we've been running on the Discord server that's been a lot of fun. So check that out if you feel so inclined. And other than that, I come out with new videos every Wednesday, and thank you so much for hanging out. Okay. Okay. My computer's being weird, so this is my story. I don't know what's going on with me. I can't even do the thing today. What is wrong? Wow. That it's not functioning properly. I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, bye.